If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine. And maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them. From disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Join us and unwind with a good book. Welcome to Relaxing Reads.
Hi, I'm Deb in Halifax.
Hey, it's Simone in Vancouver.
Hi, it's Tanya in Edmonton.
Deb, we are on Teams when we do this podcast, and you have pink hair.
I do have pink hair.
You wild woman.
I am a wild woman. I was inspired by a book. What wild women do? They dye their hair pink.
And I swear the other day I was listening to you on the morning show, The Morning Breeze, that you co-host along with Brad, and there was talk of you getting a tattoo. Do you have tattoos already?
I do.
Oh,
yeah, I have
okay.
two. Yeah, and one is probably, oh my gosh, one maybe 20 years old and another maybe 10, like 6 or 7 years since I've had that second one. But yeah, I've been thinking about another one for a while. I have a little idea of what I want, something that represents the beach and family and nothing very big. But
Ooh, look forward to seeing that when it happens.
Yeah.
If you're going to share.
I don't have a tattoo.
I don't either. And
you don't?
No.
Oh.
And it's funny because like Deb and I, you and I have been on this podcast for like over 3 years now together, and I never knew this about you. So I was like, this is something I need to ask her about because I've always wanted it, just never quite gotten there.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad I got it later on and not when some of my university friends did because they, had to change the design of what they got when they were in university.
Yeah. I think that's always the thing is you hear all the stories about people who regret their choices. So I guess that makes sense. There's never a good time or not a good time to get one. You can get one later in life and you're a little more certain of what you want. So I think that's really neat.
Yeah, exactly.
And I totally want to get one, but the problem that I have is that I got like double piercings in my ears a year ago, May long weekend, and they have finally healed. And so it's like what? It's like over a year later that my ears. So I'm like, if I ever got a tattoo, what would happen? My body just doesn't like me to do any changes. So I don't know. Maybe I'll get brave and do it. I don't know.
I got my nose pierced with my best friend when we were 21. We went together and we went and did it. And it was great. And I had it for years. And then there was just this one day where I was like, I don't want it anymore. And I took it out. So there's been this hole in my nose for so long. It hasn't even grown over. And the last little while, I've noticed nose rings on people again. And I was just thinking about it, and out of the blue, like she ended up taking hers out as well. She messages me and she goes, hey, I've been thinking, should we get our noses re-pierced again? I was like, what are we doing?
No kidding.
I'm like, you want it? And then that's a little bit easier than a tattoo removal. And so I was like, maybe I'm ready to pierce it again. What am I doing?
I had a nose piercing. And it didn't heal. Like it was just like, it was really cute. And then like the next day it was a mess. And I'm like, okay, the whole cute factor is not working for me if it's like a red inflamed thing. So I had to take it out. It was so sad.
Oh, darn.
I know.
I've never had my nose pierced, but I always wanted to do that too.
Well, while you're at the tattoo shop,
bucket list.
If you're at the tattoo shop and piercing is available, Deb, I feel like this is your moment.
I will, adding it to my list as we speak.
Oh, that's funny. All right, are we ready to chat about this lovely book?
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Our latest read, What Wild Women Do by Karma Brown, is about 1970s feminist Eddie facing the cost of loss and autonomy strives to create a better future for women at her Adirondacks camp. The other woman, Rowan, an aspiring screenwriter of today, makes a shocking discovery that sets her on a course of rewriting her own story. It's lives that interweave as two women in very different circumstances go on journeys of self-discovery. There are touching moments about women's empowerment and so much more. I felt like this was part mystery, part journey to self-discovery, and I think we all, as strong women, love to hear stories and read stories about other independent women, the friendships that women have, and I love this portion of finding yourself as well. How did you ladies feel about it?
Absolutely. I felt the same thing. I mean, it's, part of the novel is in 1975. And Rowan is in 2021. So you've got a big distance there. But I love how the author sort of weaves together the chapters. I didn't feel like I was disconnected, from either one of them. They just flowed, even though you're jumping, 25, no, I don't know, how many years? Can't do my math. Anyway, you're
over
jumping.
40 years,
Over 40 years
yeah.
difference between. So I found both Eddie and Rowan fascinating women characters, and I a bit of the mystery of Eddie disappears, and I was the novel was written in such a way that I almost thought it was real life.
Yeah.
I actually, when she's talking about
Yeah.
the great camps in the Adirondacks, and I actually looked it up online. I looked up these camps because I wanted to see if there was a Camp Calloway. I mean, there isn't, but she did pattern it after a camp that the author knew about. But I was looking at some of these camps that the Roosevelts had built, and all the big families in the States, they're like palaces on these lakes. Oh my goodness. So I was like, I really want to go stay at one of these camps.
I
And I really
know.
want to go to a wild woman camp as well. Yeah.
Well, I did
yeah.
the same thing, Tanya. I was reading it, and then it would say the excerpt was from this part of the journal. I was like, does this place exist? Is this was this real?
Exactly.
Is Eddie Calloway a real person? And I did the same thing. I went to look it up, but it's just so well written that you believe it, and it's not you don't look at it and say this can't exist. This can't be real. And yeah, the idea of those families who would just summer. Our generation, we can't really summer. If you're not financially there, you can't take 2 months off of summer. But, before it was to take that break, if you had the means to go and spend 2 months to sit at a lake and just enjoy time with your family, that just seems lovely. And I love that part of the book too, is that the whole women's empowerment and helping each other. I had this conversation with someone recently, and I feel like when you're in your 20s, sometimes you can not help but compete with other women, because sometimes that's the industry you're in and that's how you feel. And then you kind of get into your 30s, you get a little more confident. And I feel like once you hit your 40s, you are really about collaborating with women and, supporting each other and helping each other, because we've all gone through stuff in life. And I love that she had that journey in life where she had everything, but yet she didn't have what she really needed, and she wanted to share her gift with people. And I thought that was really beautiful. And especially with Rowan, who's a young woman who's trying to figure out her life, for her to be able to find this kind of almost mentor who actually really doesn't even exist, but she's able to kind of follow along and follow her journey, and she feels compelled to learn more about her. I really enjoyed that part of the book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I loved there are so many themes, I think, in this book. But there was one scene. There's a scene that I laughed out loud at. But one scene where Eddie is 50 in her 50s, sorry, in 1975, and she has a relationship with a young woman. And there was a scene where they were together in bed, and it was a lovely, soft, intimate scene where Eddie says, I look at Judith in her perfect body, and because she's 24. She's looking at her and thinking she's just perfect. She's 24 and perfect, and I'm in my 50s, and gravity has taken its toll and all of that. But Eddie says, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. And I just thought, wow, as women, to be in a place where you are completely comfortable in your own skin, where you're not comparing yourself against anybody. And I just thought it was such a lovely, the scene was written, I say a scene, because it kind of played out in my mind like that. And I just thought such a lovely thing for Eddie to feel like that, and that she wasn't comparing herself to anybody. And I thought, man, I'm in my 50s and I'm not there.
Yeah,
I'm not
I
completely
hear ya.
comfortable in my own skin, and I still have doubts and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of really gravitated towards her in that scene for sure.
Yeah. And I think that starts to slowly come with age. Tanya, you say you're not there, but you're probably a lot further than maybe where you were 20 years ago in how you felt about yourself. We age, and it's true. It's like I could spend 2 hours at the gym, or I could just enjoy my plate of cheese and wine and just live my life right now. We make choices, right? And so it's like with those choices comes, like she said, she liked her body a little softer because for years she had the pressure to look a certain way, act a certain way. And now she's like, this is who I want to be. If I'm still healthy, I'm able to hike and do all these things, then my body is working for me, not against me. So it's okay if you have a little extra padding, but you're still healthy,
Yeah, and she also said, she said she likes her body softer. And then she also said that, she doesn't shave or do anything like that. But she says, I curl my hair and I wear lipstick and I make no apologies for that. Right? So she's like a total feminist, but she's like, I do these two things and that's me, and everything else is like, gardening in the nude. Okay.
Yeah.
We can do it all, ladies.
Yes, we can.
We can do it all.
And I love that. I don't know. For me, I think when I was younger and I heard the term feminism, or when people ask you, "Are you a feminist?" and of course, it was usually men asking that question, and if I usually was yes right away, but I didn't know what that meant when I was younger. And now, after reading this, I thought, you know what, feminism is so many things. Like, it's so many wonderful things. It can be so much to any individual on any certain day. But I think it's like every day. We don't know how it's going to unravel or how it will affect us. And I think that, Eddie and Rowan herself and the other characters, they all presented as feminists in so many different ways in their life.
Yes, absolutely. And they explore sort of the intolerance of that in this book, where Eddie has her camp and she has every right to be there. Her family has had that property since the late 1800s. And then there's these other great camps with these guys, and one of them, Victor, they call him Fred Flintstone. I could just see him. He's just like this. I envision him as this like squat, sort of like when he gets mad, his face gets inflamed and he stomps his feet. Like that's sort of how, and he is completely aghast, I think, at the wild women camp and like what kinds of things that they do there, because of course Eddie puts up pamphlets and things and he sees them in the town and he just goes crazy. Meanwhile, his wife, I think her name is Laura, I would have liked to have known Laura a little bit, but she kind of had a little bit of a smirk with her husband. So I don't know how that relationship works. Anyway, it's just sort of that intolerance of people doing their own thing. Eddie's not bothering anybody. She's just doing this camp, and there's people around that don't like what she's doing, don't like what she stands for. And I'm just like, just leave well enough alone. Like,
I know.
It's beautiful. Just,
yeah.
Leave it alone.
Leave it alone. But sometimes people can't. And that was the characters. The characters were really great in this book. There were so many, you got enough information about them. You didn't feel like you couldn't really get to know them. So I felt like the descriptions were really great with some of the side characters as well, outside of the two main characters. But it was really well written. And like you said, Tanya, it just kind of flowed. You just wanted to keep continuing because the mystery part of it is what had me, because I was like, what's going to happen? I know something has happened, but what is it? And anytime they would, have these relationships, was it with Jess and her partner Aiden? I was like, do they have something to do with what's going on? And then it was like, controversial when you thought that maybe her partner, like, why did she end up with certain things at the end? What was going on? But it was unexpected when you still get to the end to kind of learn what happened. But very interesting.
Yeah,
I didn't figure it out.
Was.
I didn't know that.
I didn't
that's
either.
What happened
Yeah,
to
either did I.
No.
But you're right. This whole mystery, like the reader is carried on, and you kind of you're like, oh, did this happen? Did this? Every time a new character is introduced, you're thinking, did they have something to do with it? Foul play, like what? And then you think, Victor and the other guys, you think, well, maybe they did something, and It's very, yeah, it just takes you along for a ride. And of course, there's Rowan's story too with her boyfriend, Seth. And I was like,
Seth.
would you guys, they moved.
Boo, Seth.
Oh, boo.
Boo, Seth. I know, but they met and 3 days later they moved in together. That's the history of Rowan and Seth because he wrote her a handwritten letter. And I'm like, yep, that do it for me.
Yeah. That's all it takes.
If some guy wrote me a beautiful letter, like handwritten cursive writing, I'd be like, yeah, you're the one. But we certainly find out where Seth's true colors are.
It was so,
as the story develops.
it was getting stressful for me, the amount that he needed to just film and do that because, Rowan is an aspiring screenwriter. Seth is a writer. The whole reason they kind of go off the grid before they learn about this camp is to kind of work on both of their crafts. And then there's this whole side story of they're on YouTube because their finances aren't so great. And he's like a YouTuber and she's kind of a part of it. But then all this incredible stuff is happening where she wants to be present, but he is like, no, let's post. Let's get this online as opposed to let's just figure it out and go from there. And I think that is the world we live in where sometimes there's that pressure to, if you do have a big following or an audience, and this is how people make their money, they're just like, what is private in your life? Because so much is just public. And, you put a lot of stuff out there and that's what was happening. And she almost was kind of not wanting to be as public as he was, especially with the things they were discovering along this journey.
Well, and there was the part where, she was fatiguing of like, why does everything have to be documented? It's my 30th birthday and you're staging it. And then you're going to, so she thought everything was fake. And she goes on that rant, right, where she posts on their social media channel, the Right Story or whatever it's called, where she says, everything is fake. Everything, she just kind of... right? Like, have you guys ever done anything on social media where, I don't know, you've had a couple of wobbly pops and you go, I'm going to do this. And then you look at it the next day and go, oh my no.
Yes. I think when I started out on Snapchat, when Snapchat was big, I want to say this was 10 years ago or something. And you'd be out and you would, because everybody was doing it. So you would be out and you're like filming cheers, you're filming dancing. I'd always be like singing. And then like now when those memories come up, I'm like, what's going on? And there were days, because it's like there were times where I would get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom or needed to drink water. And then I'm like, what did I post last night? And it was nothing ever terrible. Like I never did anything inappropriate or scandalous, but it was just stuff like, this is unnecessary. Why are you posting all of this? And so I learned that really quick. And even now, if I know it's going to be a night where there are going to be extra beverages, I just put my phone away. And I'm a big fan of the later grams, not the Instagram. I will take photos and videos if I feel like everyone, wants this documented. And I'll ask people, like I have a friend who does not like social media. I will take one picture if we're together just for the memory, and then I'll put the phone away. Whereas I have a cousin, when her and I go out, we're just love it. We love the content. We love doing it. So you have to know your audience, and then you have to be like, okay, we've got all the stuff, and then in a couple days we can decide what we want to share. It doesn't have to be put out instantly, and then you regret it. So I think I've learned a lesson in that, and I feel like maybe she did, but it was a good thing that it happened the way it did for her because there was a big lesson there.
Definitely, yeah. I do. It's funny lately, or maybe it was over the last number of months. I was feeling what she was feeling, just exhausted with social media for whatever reason, and I haven't posted a lot or as much as I have in the past. And I look at my Instagram, and I do I think more stories than actual posts. And I'm looking at my phone. I'm like, what are all these pictures? And I've been going back. I'm like, oh, I mean, that would have been okay to share. And like, so there are things that I could have shared, but I was just like, I'm tired. Nobody cares. Nobody wants to see that.
Yeah. And I think with us, like we're, public figures, we're in the media. So there's that fine balance too, right? It's about, being able to kind of share because we share things on the radio. And then, when we're out at events and things, it's cool things we want to share. But then it's also knowing like what parts of your life you want to keep private. Like when I see people sharing, I just bought this new house and here's my address and here's this, or here's where my children go to school. That's where I kind of protect that space. And I have a private private account just for like my immediate family. And that's where my kids, like, they want their pictures posted there and they want stuff. So I ask them now too. Like I say, hey, can I post this? Is that okay? And sometimes they'll say nope.
Yeah.
And I'll say, okay, because I mean, they're growing up in this world where 10 years from now, like I never posted anything embarrassing. Like I know some families are posting all these things and I'm like, I don't want them to grow up and be like, Mom, why did you post that? So, and I'm not afraid to pull it down because it's not a business for me. It's not a have to, but I think it's that fine line of just knowing what feels comfortable. And I think for some people that's hard, and some people are so anti-social media, and I respect that as well. They don't want anything online, and yeah, it's just that world we're in. Sometimes I like it, and then sometimes I'm like, oh, I wish it would just go away.
I know. There are some blurred lines, and for this particular couple in the book, or people out there who do this for a living, it must just be absolutely exhausting. And I'm sure there's a point where you think, is this who I am, or is this who I've become because of the audience? Like maybe that was me for a moment, but is that who I like? What is my life? What is it that I'm really after? And I think some people do a really good job, but as Rowan went on and talked about how fake everything was, I think that we probably will look now at some of those folks that we follow and question it a little more. Maybe?
I think that's the thing. I think I've heard that's where social media is kind of trending. More people just want relatable, real content. Yeah. Like when it first started, it was all about, look at what I have, look at the trips I take, look at all this. And it was just like, that's what everybody was posting, the highlight reel. And now it seems that even some of the people that I thought weren't being really genuine, you just have to unfollow them because you want people who are a little bit real, and it's sharing their successes, but maybe sharing some failures along the way as well, or how they got to certain places. I think those stories are a little more admirable as opposed to just my life is perfect, because we all know no one's life is perfect. But that's why I think it's so hard for kids. Like we're older, we can see if something looks legit or not, but for kids, it's just they get really caught up in it, and it's a scary world.
Yeah, they don't have the mind frame, they don't have the experience to make those kinds of decisions or to interpret the information that they're getting, right? They just don't have that in them. I thought it was interesting, with these two stories, and perhaps Karma Brown, the author, was making a comparison of like Rowan and Seth and how they're so connected with everything. And then you have Eddie, who is not connected at all, right? Living in this camp, a feminist doing all these sort of empowerment things for women. And then you have Aiden and his girlfriend Jess, who are totally off the grid, and how they look at nature and they're foraging for their food. And Karma writes a lot about nature in this book, She talks about look up, look at the sky. Do the sun salutations every morning to greet the sun. So I feel like she's making a comment there about sort of the differences in how we live our lives,
Yeah, because we're looking down.
Which one is better?
In our phone.
We're looking down. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you've got, I think Jess says in the book that she used to feel disconnected in her other life, but she doesn't feel that anymore. She just looks at the world around her, the trees, the birds, and it all kind of connects her back to the earth, which, a little side note, my sister, who's kind of a hippie, she'll hate me saying that, but she's into earth walking right now. I'm like, Lita, what is that? She goes, I think with wearing shoes, we're disconnected from the earth. So we need to take off our shoes and socks, and we need to walk on the earth so that we have a connection to it.
I've heard
and so we
that.
actually did. We did that one time. I went out to the farm where she has her horses and all that, and we went earth walking. I got a little prickly on my toes. I'm not going to lie. There's some thistles out there, but but I think if it was a really nice park, it would be nice.
I've heard that, just to ground yourself with we're all energy, right? Built with these energy particles. And when you put your feet, on the grass, or you're walking through the sand on a beach. You're connecting with the earth, right? So it's like, I think it's finding the right thing. Yeah. Like, I don't know if, you're brave walking through a farm, that you could find some surprises there, but I think a place that's like a safe space. I've heard that too, is just, starting your day by just getting like 10 minutes of outdoor time, just getting a little bit of sunlight or just that fresh air, and then finding a few minutes in the day to just ground and feel the earth is so important.
Yeah.
And I'm not a nature person. Like when I was reading this, like the parts of hiking alone really scare me because I'm afraid I would get lost and, something would happen. And I used to do it like with friends when I was younger, but I never felt safe in nature. Like, I think it's because I'm a city person and I've always been around people. So I'll do things locally that are like more, targeted towards larger groups of people. But, there's something beautiful about being lost in nature, but it's still, I think for a lot of people, maybe there is a little fear associated with that. So it's, you have to find ways where you can get that taste of nature, maybe in an urban space. But yeah.
They always say that the first thing you should do in the morning is like go outside and get the morning sun on your face.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They say, I don't know, there's something about that. But anyway, sorry, Deb, you were going to.
No, I was just
jump
going to
in
say,
there.
when you were talking about, feeling your feet on the grass, it just reminds me of, when you're a kid in the summers, like you don't need shoes, right? Whether you're, in a park or in the woods or on the beach. And I think there's a lot of things with what's going on today. We can relate back to the simplicity of being a child and being free. And we need to take that back and find that within ourselves, because I think that will help us with a lot of things around us. And it's funny, Simone, I grew up in a rural area and I lived in the woods. We had these paths along a brook on our property and walked up and down this hill, this mountain. We called it a mountain. It wasn't quite a mountain. And would go by myself all day if I could.
Yeah.
Now I don't necessarily go in the woods. I'll go to the shore and walk to the beach by myself, and there may be one or two people around. There will be some animals I meet up with, but yeah, I living in the city for all these years now, I think I've become a little fearful of it as well. So I think I need to get back.
Well, you just said it right there. When I was a kid, we were always exploring and we were doing things. But I think with age comes fear too. We know a lot more, and you just get, you start to, you're not as free. Like there were things I was doing when I was a kid, like in the woods and stuff with a friend. Like I never went alone, but always with someone. But again, like there's no fear during those ages. You're not, out there thinking anything. And now as you get older, you think about these things like, what if I go out? What if I get hurt? What if my phone doesn't work and I have no service? Will anyone come find me? Do I need an Apple AirTag? Like what? All these things that you think of, and then you're like, maybe I'll just stay home and sit in the yard.
So you're saying that we've suddenly become responsible in our thinking?
Yes. What did you guys think of the camp, the Wild Women Camp? Have you ever been to, like, what do we call it?
Women's retreat.
A retreat.
Yeah.
Have you ever been to a women's retreat?
Not like that.
I never have.
I
No,
would
not
love
like
to.
definitely not like the one in the book, but I really
No,
love
no.
sort of. I love how organically Eddie was about it, though, right? Like she just, there's a line in the book where it says that money can also be a burden, right? And I feel like she felt like that, so she offered this camp for free to women who wanted to go, and I just loved how she connected with them, how she tried to pinpoint what was going on with them and try to support them. And there's like this really cool wishing wall that's in one of the centers, and I'm like, wouldn't that be cool to just kind of write down your greatest wish or whatever. Sometimes I think it's good to write stuff down because it just makes you sort of more present, and it's like right there on the page, right, of what you want. So I just thought it was a really cool. I would love to go to a retreat. I think maybe that's what the yoga retreats are, right?
Yeah,
for men and women. But I
Okay,
think that's
you sign
sort of
us up, Tanya,
mostly
we'll
women.
show up.
Oh yeah, okay, let's do it. There's actually a camp called Camp Hovey in Quebec, and it's an old, big building, but it is a great camp. It was a great camp back in the day, and it is now a property that you can go to, and it's got a beautiful lake and stuff. I've always wanted to go there. So I think probably the area that would be most close to the Adirondacks is the Muskokas for us, right? I guess we're rich Canadians go to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you sign us up and we'll be there. Again, thanks for listening to our podcast on Karma Brown's What Wild Women Do. On our next podcast, we'll actually be chatting with Karma Brown. So if you have questions for her, find us on social media. You can find us on Facebook, X, and Instagram at Stingray Podcasts. Find the post with the picture of the book cover for Karma Brown's What Wild Women Do, and you can leave your questions there for Karma and for us. Thanks again for listening.
Thank you for kicking back and relaxing with us. We hope you'll join us again on Relaxing Reads.